Yeah, I announced that we would be having something special tonight, and it is something special because I'm not preaching. So it's something a little bit different, and so actually I've asked Jason to speak for us tonight, so come ahead. And Lord laid something on his heart, and he made the mistake of sharing it with me. That's really good. Why don't you bring that to us? And I believe it'll be a blessing.
My dad is one of my favorite preachers.
Well, you're starting off good.
Some of my favorite messages of his is, now I can't think of them, so that's nice. Digging the wells again, and what happens when the preaching stops. Those are two great messages that he's preached. This will be nothing like that. So, moving on from that, I have prepared notes. And let's pray before I get started. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this many blessings, Lord. Help me as I speak, Lord. Help who I'm speaking to understand what I'm saying and to learn from this message, Lord. Help each and every one of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, when you apply for a job, as most of us know, they always try and choose the best that they have, the best of their options. Choose the most excellent, the one most qualified for the job. God doesn't always do that. God mostly chooses the ones who are not the best. So, if God doesn't choose the best, why should he choose you? Because all of us here, we're not the best at what we do. There's always going to be someone better. But why should he choose you? Because there's multitudes of not the best. Where are we left with that? In 1 Corinthians 1. 1 Corinthians 1 and verse 26 says, "For ye shall see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called, but God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty." So, what makes us stand out? Are we the best? We're obviously not the best. But what makes us stand out? The real answer to that is there's nothing that really truly makes us stand out. In Romans chapter 3, Romans chapter 3 and verse 12, it says, They are all gone out of the way. They are together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. We are all together in that. We're all lumped together. There's none good. There's nothing good about us. We're not the best. So where does that leave us? When you're applying for a job, most employers ask, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you say about yourself? And applying that to this, what are our strengths? Well, we don't have strength. Our strength comes from Christ. In 1 Corinthians 1:26 again. I can get back there. There we go. It says, starting verse 25, "Because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For ye shall see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called." And it goes on. But it's very obvious there that we are nothing. We are nothing to God. We are weak. God's weakness is leaps and bounds ahead of our strength. So, where does that leave us? Are we just plain unworthy Joe Blow that doesn't deserve God's service, that we don't even deserve to serve God? We are just unworthy. In Acts chapter 13. And verse 46. Then Paul and Barnabas waxed bold and said, It was necessary that the word of God should first have been spoken to you, but seeing ye put it from you, and judge yourselves unworthy of everlasting life, lo, we turn to the Gentiles. We are unworthy of anything and everything that God has to offer us. There is nothing even remotely worthy that we have. In 1 Corinthians 6:2, 1 Corinthians 6:2 says, Do ye not know that the saints shall judge the world? And if the world shall be judged by you, are ye not unworthy to judge in the smallest matters? We are unworthy to say that this person is wrong, because we are just as guilty as they are. We are unworthy of God's glory. We are unworthy of anything and everything. What are we worthy of? Because we are worthy of something. What are we worthy of? In Romans chapter 1, in verse 32, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. There you go. We are worthy of death. That is what we are worthy of. We aren't worthy of anything else. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ. We aren't worthy of anything. We are worthy of death and the second death. Those are the only things that we are worthy of. But what made the Bible characters different than us? Because they were used by God, and most all of them were used greatly by God. So how are they different? Well, it's the heart. In Hebrews chapter 10, Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 37. For yet a little while, and he that shall come will come, and will not tarry. That is wrong. It's verse 22. Let us draw near with a true heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience, and our bodies washed with pure water. Our heart is everything. God made the heart the center of man, because it is. Our heart is our motivation. Our heart is the way we act. Because we love things, we act a certain way. As my dad was speaking about Sunday, about loving your wives, because you love your wife, you will act a certain way. Because you love your parents, you will show them respect. Those are things that you do, just because you love this certain thing. Our heart is our motivation as well. In Romans 1:21. Romans 1:21, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. The Bible talks about not being able to know your own heart and to not being able to trust it because your heart is foolish. But your heart is still your motivation, no matter if you can trust it or if you can't. Everyone nowadays manipulates and uses and pulls on the heartstrings because they want something or another. But why we do things is still completely up to us, because it is our motivation. It is from us. And our motivation is mostly derived from our outlook. The way we look at things tend to make us think and make us do things. What we see, we have a reaction. Every action has a reaction. There we go. And so our outlook should be completely and fully on God. If it is not completely and fully on God, then our outlook is in the wrong place. And therefore our motivation will be wrong. And then our actions will be wrong. There's a progression there. In Hebrews 12:2, Hebrews 12:2, it says, "Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy who set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." So, obviously, by that verse, very, very plainly, it says, looking unto Jesus. That's where we should always look. But Jesus, who is our example, had to have something set before him. Who through the joy which was set before him, he had to look towards something as well. He's our example. So shouldn't we follow him in that matter? In Luke chapter 9 and verse 62. Luke 9:62. Luke chapter 9 and verse 62 says, "And Jesus said unto him, No man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of heaven." We have to have our focus. If we're using this example, if we have our hand to the plow and looking back, we can't see what the plow is doing. We can't see if we're following what we should be doing or if we're straying away. And that's true in everyday life, because if we look away from God, then everything goes wrong. Like Peter, when he was on the water, he looked away from God and looked at the waves, and then he sank. It was only then that he sank. When he was looking at God, he was fine. He didn't realize until he looked away from God. In Matthew chapter 6 and verse 24. Matthew chapter 6 and verse 24. It says, "No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon." Looking to God is a most definite choice. You either choose to look at God or you choose not to. There is no in between. And that's going to affect our motivation, because if we're looking at the world, we will love the world and the things that are in it. If we look at God, we will love God and want to do things for God. That's just how we have been designed. We can't look at God and then immediately turn around and look at the world and say, okay, yeah, well, I like this about the world and I like this about God. You can't serve God and mammon. We can't have God and try and serve Him and then run off to the world and try and serve the world as well. There is no doing both. So we have to fully dedicate ourselves to having the right outlook, which is on God. We have to make sure we have a clean heart if we want to be even remotely usable by God. In Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 5. Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 5. It says, Then said I, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then flew one of the seraphims unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the tongs from off the altar. And he laid it upon my mouth, and said, Lo, this hath touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away. And I heard a voice of the Lord, saying, Whom shall I send, and whom will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me. So he had to take care of something before he could say, Here am I, send me. There was something in the way of him and his fellowship with God. He had to get it right. He had to be in fellowship, in sync with God. If we aren't in sync with God, nothing really turns out right. If we try to serve God and we're not in sync with Him, then we are doing things in our own strength, which will never ever turn out well. In Proverbs chapter 20, Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 9 says, if I can find it, Who can say, I have made mine heart clean, I am pure from my sin? Well, we have to eventually have a pure heart, maybe, one day. Who can say, I have made my heart clean, I am pure from my sin? A Christian should always be able to say, I have a pure heart. I am in fellowship with God. That is one of the attributes of a Christian, is he's always honest, he's always pure, he's always one of those above average guys in this world. He's something that is not found very often. And being a pure heart is not just, I don't have sin, I don't have unconfessed sin. It's a way of action.
Right.
It's the way you conduct yourself in a day-to-day life. It's pure. It's hard to explain, but it's a thing that Christians always, everywhere, should have and have had. The apostles were always something different. They always acted a certain way, and they were very different. You could look at them, and they knew that was a Christian. Stephen, when he was being tried, they looked on him, and they saw, I forget how it puts it, but they saw something different about him, and it was because he was a Christian. That's one of the things that a Christian has. A Christian is of pure heart. In Psalms chapter 24. Psalm chapter 24. And verse number 4. He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully, he shall receive the blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. Most people that I talk to that are Christians say it is a blessing to serve the Lord. I believe that's one thing that he is talking about here. It's a blessing to serve God. If you have a clean heart, you are going to be able to be used of God at any point and any time. There is nothing really holding you back if you're of pure heart. It's just a straight line to God and where he wants you to be, because you are of pure heart. Nothing can stand in the way of you and serving God, because it's something that you long to do. It's something that you want to do. The next thing I want to look at is, are you preparing to be chosen? God doesn't choose just anyone. He has a list. As Mom always tells us, Mom had a list for Dad that she prayed over every day. And apparently your sisters thought it was silly. But she got what she wanted, so that's something. But are you preparing now to be chosen? As I did for the teen rally, I wanted to be chosen for the Bible quiz. So I prepared for it. Being prepared is most definitely a choice. Whether you prepare or not, you have made your choice. If you procrastinate, that is your choice. It's the same thing. Either you are with God or you're against God. Being chosen is a great honor normally, unless you're at Chill Out and being chosen for a challenge, then back out immediately. Don't go there. But being chosen is a great honor that not everyone gets. And normally when you're chosen, that means that is for you. It's not for anyone else. That has been chosen for you. That is custom made for you. And that's pretty much how God chooses people. Every time he chooses someone, it's going to be custom made for that person. No one else can do it like that person. I can't preach like my dad can. I would say nor do I want to, but he's in the room, so I can't say that. I can't preach like Jared can. I can't sing like Jared can. I can't play piano like my father can. I can't sing like James can. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I can't. Because my position in the church has been chosen for me. I can't go behind and say, okay, I want to be pastor of True Life Baptist Church, and it work out okay. Because that's not my position. I have not been called to fit that position. It's not for me. It hasn't been chosen for me. So we have to be prepared to be chosen. In 2 Timothy 2:15. Second Timothy 2:15 says, "Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." When I was younger, I always thought Dad was really strict biblically. When we would take Bible quizzes or anything like that, he was always so strict. I'm like, why, Dad? He was preparing us for life. It says, study to show thyself approved unto God. That's not just anyone. That's God. God has a higher standard than most people, I'd say. Because he's God, I mean, in theory. But we have to be approved unto God. We have to study. We have to prepare to be approved by God. Now, Christians don't walk around with the approved sticker on their forehead. We just don't do that. But you can tell when someone is approved by God. When someone is a Christian, they should be approved by God, but not all the times they are. All the times, that makes sense. When a lot of times when we're out and we're doing something, whatever, they'll come up to my dad or my mom and they'll say, "You're Christians, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "You're Independent Baptist, aren't you?" "Yeah, how'd you know that?" Like, Christians, okay, we can see that. But Independent Baptist, that's something different. Mm-hmm. Everyone else can see the approvedness, which is not a word, but being approved by God, everyone else can see that. It's not just a thing that no one else can see. Mm-hmm. Being approved by God is something, it's a great honor, such as being chosen. So being chosen is another way for God to saying that you are approved. You have been approved to do this position. You have been approved to do this. Nobody wants the responsibility of any position, ever. I remember when Dad gave me my first responsibility that I had to do consistently. I was so scared. But he was saying that I approve of what you've done so far, and I think you can do this. I think you can do better. You've done good, do better. When God approves someone, it's him showing that it's him saying that you have done well. It's him rewarding you. Yeah, it may have more responsibility. It may be 10 times harder than the previous position that you were in, but you have been approved. It is a better position. You can now try to show God that you can do even better by preparing for the next position. These things that we go through now, they truly do prepare us for what we're going to do later. What are we doing now? How are we doing now? See, we have to evaluate ourselves and see, am I doing good or am I doing bad? Am I preparing for that next step, or am I just not preparing? And have I chosen not to prepare? See, everyone, the other Christians can see when we have prepared and when we have not. They can also see how we are doing now. There's some accountability there. And that should kind of scare us, because others can see what you're doing. But not just others, God can. God knows what we're doing. And if we're preparing or not, that's our beef with God. The next thing I want to see here is we have to guard our heart. Otherwise, we may not fall alone. It doesn't matter if we fall, but who comes with us? Like I just said, if we're preparing or not, people are watching. If we fall, who else is going to fall with us? In Joshua chapter 7, Joshua chapter 7 and verse 1 says, "But the children of Israel committed a trespass in the accused thing, for Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zebodai, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, took of the accused thing, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against the children of Israel." Most of us, I think, know that story. Achan, I was studying this out, and I thought it was hysterical, because his oxen, his sheep, his asses, everything he owned was taken and stoned. You think his oxen couldn't have been used, his sheep? The gold that he had, everything that he had was taken and it was not allowed to be used? Do you think it could have been used? It could have been. But he lost his valuables. He also lost his friends. The men that went up with him, or went up to fight in the battle, all of them were lost. They died. He lost his friends because of his sin. But also, all the children of Israel were judged for this. Because they couldn't move on until that sin was dealt with. Immediately goes back to what I already said. If we don't have a clean heart, we can't move on. We can't go nowhere. The children of Israel did not go, but he also lost his family. His family was stoned with him. His kids didn't do anything. His kids knew nothing about it, most likely. His wife probably knew about it. But what did she have to do about it? She only knew about it after the fact. They had no part in the sin, but they were judged along with him. We have to be careful because it could be a Christian that's following behind us, and we mess up once. That Christian behind us, he's messed up along with us. He's being judged right next to us. We have to be careful about something that may be a little bit off-colored. The person behind us doesn't know if that's off-colored at all. They may go off the deep end the other way because, oh, well, this Christian likes this. And so now we're being judged for being a little bit off-colored and being a stumbling block for them, and they're being judged for their far-out sin. What are we doing to the Christians around us? How are we affecting them? Next, we must endure and not give in the hard times. In 2 Samuel, chapter 23. And verse 9, "And after him was Eleazar, the son of Dodo, the Ahohite, one of the 3 mighty men with David, when they defied the Philistines that were there gathered together to battle, and the men of Israel were gone away. He arose and smote the Philistines until his hand was weary, and his hand clave to the sword. And the Lord wrought a great victory that day, and the people returned after him only to spoil. This is one of David's mighty men. But he lasted until the end. And we can see the effects of him lasting until the end. The Lord wrought a great victory. It wasn't just a victory. It was a great victory. He did good. He was able to withstand how many thousands of Philistines? He withstood even though his friends ran away. He had no one with him. What do you think he thought? He probably was afraid. He fought so long that his sword clave to his hand. That must have been painful. I remember when I was younger, mowing the lawn, especially the church lawn because it was ginormous. Mow the lawn, you get done, your hands barely move anymore. You walk around like this for about 2 days then. It must have hurt, but no matter what the pain he went through, no matter what he did, he stood and he fought for God. In Ephesians 6:13, Ephesians 6 and verse 13 says, "Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand." That's pretty self-explanatory. My aunt, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Everyone else was so broken up about it, and she was the happiest person I ever knew. Mm-hmm. She was awesome. She was always cracking jokes. She never had a hard day that anyone else ever saw. Instead, she would make jokes about what she was going through, even though they were extremely hard, extremely painful. She acted like nothing. She acted like, she actually told my mom, you get to go to Canada, I get to have cancer. Who looks at that like that? Nobody looks at anything like that. Like it's a privilege to have cancer. But she affected hundreds of doctors and nurses, and even just people that went in to the hospital with her. She was one of the most outgoing people I ever knew, because she just talked to anyone. She made it seem so easy. It was ridiculous. And she died almost the exact time the doctors gave her. But before she went, she called my mom and said, "I get to go see Dad," because her dad had already died. She's like, "I get to go see Dad." My mom's crying, and she's like, "Why are you crying? This is a great thing." She was so happy to be on the path she was on. Mm-hmm. She was pleased. She withstood until the end. She did not give up her happiness to the hard times. She did not give up her Christianity to the hard times. She gave up nothing. Mm-hmm. She was the most amazing person because she was strong. We have to live our lives humble and not proud. Because if we're proud, nothing goes well for us. And normally we can't withstand. If we're proud, our ego gets in the way. Nothing actually happens. We can talk about it, but we can't do it. So, good luck with that. Psalms chapter 40 and verse 4. Psalms chapter 40 and verse 4 says words. Blessed is the man that maketh the Lord his trust, and respecteth not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. One thing about proud people is they don't trust anyone else. They don't even listen to anyone else ever. That's just not a thing that they do. How can we be a Christian and be proud if we can't trust our Lord? In 1 Samuel chapter 15, First Samuel chapter 15, verse 17. And Samuel said, When thou wast little in thine own eyes, wast thou made king and made the head of the tribes of Israel, and the Lord anointed thee king over Israel. That's pretty self-explanatory also. He was a great king, I guess, at times. But when he became proud, that's when he started to make mistakes. Once he became proud, he's like, I can do it. I can make this work. And he started to make mistakes. When he wasn't proud, it's not to say he didn't make mistakes, but he made them less often, and they were in smaller matters. And so Samuel is bringing out that you're not little in your own eyes anymore. You're so proud that nobody can get through to you. You're so proud that sometimes you gotta be blunt, and he was pretty blunt. It didn't end well for him that much. Being proud, the ending doesn't go well for you. In Proverbs chapter 16, Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 17. It says, a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood. The way I look at this verse is there's a progression. You become proud, you start to lie, and then where's the boundaries? Hands that shed innocent blood. A proud look. It's not even being proud, it's just looking proud. A lying tongue. You start being so confident in yourself. It's like, oh, I can tell this, I can get away with this, or even, I can just tell this little white lie, and I will get away with it. In Proverbs 16 and verse 5. Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 5 says, "Everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Though a hand join in hand, he shall not be unpunished." Well, it's an abomination to God. This ain't no small matter no more. It's an abomination. That's a big matter to God. God doesn't characterize sin like this is a small sin, this is a big sin. But the abominations are things that we really have to worry about. Just like, are we doing that? And being proud is so easy to do. We can slip into it so easily. Pride can get in the way. Pride gets in the way more times in Christians' life than pretty much anything. Because then they start to use their own strength. I can do this. I want to do this for God. And they start going ahead of God. That's their pride. I can do this for God. It doesn't work out. And then the end of this verse it says, "He shall not go unpunished." We must also give ourselves to Him if we expect to be used in a profound way. Being used profoundly above normality. It's something that every Christian should long to do. Everyone says that Paul's ministry was amazing, and it was. But he wasn't proud. But he also gave his whole self to God. Isaiah, we already read it, he gave him his whole self to God. "Here am I, send me." He doesn't even know what's happening here. And that's why you have to step out of faith and chill out, because you don't know what's happening. But he gave him his whole self to God. My dad used to ask us, "Do you want to do something for me?" And one of us would always jump up like, yes, we do. Now he asks that and we're like, "What is it?" "What do you want me to do?" There's a difference now than there was then. But we have to give our whole selves to God, because then we have nothing holding us back, so we can serve God profoundly, in an exponential way, in an unusual way. In Ephesians 6:13, we already read it. When I was studying this, one thing that popped out to me was having done all to stand. Having done all to stand. It wasn't, "Oh, this is not working out. I mean, I tried 2 things and it didn't work, so I'm going to go elsewhere." Having done all. That means everything that you think of and more. Having done all. All. My dad's used this before. What does all mean? All. It means everything. Giving your all to God. Everyone always stresses that. Giving yourself to God. When I was younger, that's what they said. Just give yourself to God. And now that I'm a little bit older, everyone says, give your all to God. There's a great difference there to giving yourself to God and giving your all to God. Once we give our all to God, then we can be maybe close to Paul, who traveled everywhere, it seems like. He went everywhere. He did so many things. He was amazing. Just like Jesus. He when he was going to the cross, as we heard Sunday, he said, "Let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done." He gave his all to God. Every year of his life was something that was prophesied about, or something that he had to do to prepare to get to his end game, his end goal. He gave his all to God, even though he was God. Very confusing. But he gave his all to God. It was all of him. It took all of him to make it to Calvary. It took all of him to go through Calvary. It took all of him to be raised from the dead. It took his whole. It wasn't just part of him. It wasn't just, maybe I'll do it today. I'm too sick to do that. I don't want to do that. It takes our all. It doesn't matter what is happening. When Jesus fed the 5,000, there was 5,000 to be fed. They sacrificed food for Christ. If we're to be Christians, we have to sacrifice food. Even though we are Baptists, we have to sacrifice food. It's very difficult. But we have to sacrifice everything for God. Then we may possibly, on a slim chance, we will be counted worthy in Acts chapter 5. Acts chapter 5 and verse 41. It says, "And they departed from the presence of the council, rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer for his name." They were happy to give their all. They suffered for the Lord. They suffered for Jesus. And Paul died for Christ, and then he was raised from the dead. He gave his life. We have to give our all to even think about being used by God. If it's not our all, then how can we think about being used? Because God has nothing to work with. Because if it's not all, it's not. No man can serve two masters. If it's not all, it's none. There's nothing there. So we have to give our full selves to God. That's what makes the difference. Our heart, giving our full heart to God.
I appreciate that. The thing is, so often we as Christians, we want to be used by God. We want to be some of those, although, maybe not mighty, maybe not wise, according to the world, maybe not rich according to the world, but we want to be used of God. We say, what do I need to do? And we heard that tonight, what we need to do. I'm going to kind of give you 4 things, just by way of recap. There's that focus, that singleness of heart. Our heart's not divided among all the things that the world tries to use to steal our heart away. There's that singleness of heart. There's that study, that preparation. We can't be used of God without preparation. It doesn't just, it's not like falling out of a tree. It doesn't just happen. There has to be preparation on our part. And then the third thing is self-denial. Being used of God is being used. Used. That's what people are so scared to death of. I don't want people to use me. Well, you know what? If you want to be used of God, you have to allow yourself to be used. Oh, nobody's going to use me. Well, then guess what? God can't use you. You have to deny yourself. It can't be on the basis of what's good for me. Because what's good for you and what you think is good for you is not going to be what God wants of you. So there has to be that self-denial. And then, as we heard, that the fourth thing is sacrifice and shame. The idea of giving it all. Giving everything. Do you want to be used of God? Some people, what they want is the authority without the responsibility. They want the name, that there's some great something for God, without actually putting in the time and the effort, the preparation, the self-denial. They just want people to pat them on the head and tell them what a great Christian they are, without actually having their focus on Christ. You want to be used of God. We've heard that. It all comes down to our heart. Where's the focus of our heart? Where's the preparation in our heart? Where's the self-denial in our heart? Where's the sacrifice and even the shame if it comes to that? Where is that? Let's stand together with our heads bowed and eyes closed.